I know that you don't like to generalize and that every restaurant has its own story and its own processes, but just to kind of give our audience a real feel of what does the job entail. How did your day look like when you were a line cook and then later on when you became a sous chef?
Yeah, I agree with you that generalized statements can kind of be messy sometimes, but I also think that there can be generally applied advice in specifics. And so with the line cook thing, I think I'll talk about maybe a day in the life of a chef de partie at the French Laundry when I was there. And so what that would typically look like is the accepted time that people would say were coming in is 12. But because everybody was so dang busy, because the menu changed every day, we'll talk about how that happens at the end of the story, and because you kind of don't know what to expect, you want to make sure that you're set up on time, which for us was 5 o'clock in the evening. We'd start at 11, and so everybody was already starting an hour early at baseline. And so everybody would start at 11. You'd come in and you'd kind of, get your bearings with the prep list that you wrote the day before. You would go ahead into the dish area and just kind of grab all the equipment that you needed. You'd set up your station, and then you'd kind of get a sense of kind of like, what's the vibe of the kitchen today? I think that's like an underrated, you just like EQ reading that you kind of have to take of is if there's lunch service that day, is that super chaotic? What is the kind of demeanor of my manager today? I think it's like the energy kind of like you can get a vibe for how the kitchen feels that day. Then you'll take that prep list and you'll kind of go around to the different fridges in the kitchen and just kind of like source the things that you need, whether that's, vegetables or eggs or butter. You go to dry storage and grab whatever that you happen to need. And you're kind of looking at this from the sense of what are my kind of big projects today? What are the things that are, these difficult to tackle, potentially time consuming? They need time to like bake or set or cure or anything like that, where I don't want to be doing this an hour before service. I want to tackle my big projects now. I actually have a whole prep list template that I kind of came up with in conjunction with the time at the French Laundry and then time at a different restaurant, where it really helped me prioritize the things that I need to kind of focus on throughout my day. And so you get back to your station, and then it's just kind of like head down for, those first few projects of the day. You're, again, trying to communicate with people as like, what's for staff meal today, which is kind of like the next item on the docket. That typically happens around like 3:30 is when staff meal happens. That's, for a lot of us, it's our only meal of the day, because it's this, like you have probably eaten breakfast at home, and then it's like service is going to happen from 5 o'clock to probably like 11 p.m. And so it's this 6-hour stretch where like maybe you're snacking on some mise en place off your station, but like you're so busy with getting the food plated and getting food out. Most people aren't taking breaks during service. And so you want to kind of be like well fed and nourished going into service. And so 3:30 is this time when you'll kind of make staff meal. And at the French Laundry, it was a situation where individual stations got delegated different aspects of staff meal. And so there was typically like a protein that usually came with a sauce. There was a vegetable side, a starch, and then a salad. And so across the 6 stations, those kind of 4 pillars of staff meal would typically be delegated out to different people. Obviously, there were days when we would do like fun, staff meals where like we're making pizza or we're making bows or we're making, like cioppino or something like that. And so there were certain days where things would, change, but for the most part, you would get delegated something with staff meal. You'd have like a kind of a light conversation about it with the person on roast station who was typically leading staff meal. And then you would produce that, and then you're making it for, sometimes like 70, 80 people because you're feeding front of house as well. And then at 3:30, you kind of put your hotel pan up on the pass of all of the, things that you prepared for staff meal. You eat. If it was a particularly reasonable day, sometimes you'd eat outside, which was really, really nice. And then you kind of get back at, like just after 4:30, and then you're kind of making that final push with all of the preparation little bits and bobs where you're, picking your herbs and you're setting up your rail, or you're, taping down the pass, or you're getting your, individual utensils set out and your tray set for service. And then right at 5 o'clock, the ticket machine typically starts printing. And that's a situation where the executive sous chef or the chef de cuisine is standing at the pass, and they're calling out tickets, and then that kind of like the flow of service just kind of starts from there. And then you're worried about pickups and allergy modifications and all of those little individual tasks that are related to service. And then we would do two seatings typically, and this was mirrored across other restaurants I'd work at too. So you have two kind of pushes throughout the night. Everybody kind of comes at around 5 o'clock. And then typically those people are starting to taper down and finish at around 8 p.m., 7 or 8 p.m. And then you get another push that comes in. And then you're just kind of like doing the whole same song and dance all over again. It's very similar to kind of like how theater people, or musical performers might do like two, performances that night where everybody comes in, they have their thing, they leave, and then we're just going to reset and do it all over again. And then right around that 3-hour timer starts again at around 8 p.m. So right around 11 o'clock, all of those orders are starting to subside. You're doing your last few things. And now you're starting to think about breakdown. And so you're gathering all of your mise en place from your station, and you're either like labeling it and putting it back into your fridge, or it's a situation where you're just kind of like at the French Laundry, the menu changed every day. And so it was one of those things where ideally you weren't left with that much at the end of the night. And so you get to a place where you're starting to break down, all of the equipment gets removed from your station, and then you go into kind of scrubbing mode where you're thinking about scrubbing down your countertops, the sides of your fridges, the insides of your fridges, and then you go into cleaning the floor, and then that is effectively service done. And then the kind of appendage to a French Laundry service that's difficult for most services at other restaurants is you actually sit down at the pass at the end of the night with new fresh sheets. So fresh prep list, fresh order list, and you effectively talk through what's the menu going to be for tomorrow. And you start from scratch. It is the situation of, okay, well, we did lobster today. We're wanting to do a different shellfish tomorrow. We did halibut today. We're wanting to do a different fish tomorrow. We did, lamb today. We're wanting to do a different big meat protein tomorrow. And then the sets get discussed. And so, okay, we want to do lamb. What do we want to do with the lamb? We want to do like spinach and cucumber and a yogurt sauce with the lamb. And so, cool, how are we going to do this? And you ask all these questions, and then that's influencing your prep list and your order list. You submit that to both sous chefs. One sous chef typically does the ordering, and then another sous chef would, at least when I was there, would do the list for the AM prep team for the next day. So you're not doing all of the prep yourself in these restaurants. You have, the commis or the, stagiaires who are typically helping. French Laundry didn't have stagiaires when I was working. It was a whole team of commis. And then you leave. Like it's typically like 1 a.m. And so you've done your kind of like 13-hour day. And then you get to this place where you're just getting back in it and you're going back to bed, which is just like, that's all you kind of have time for. And then you head back to work the next day and start it all over again.